To the Nutrimedical report, and of course we have we're going to be joined in a second with Emil de Toffel. Discovered a couple things, and again, some of these take time. I have all the different meters for measuring electropollution. The gigahertz solution, the actual regular we call pollution meter, that has a little kind of rectangular and very inexpensive, a few $100s. And I can walk around my home or anywhere, and I can tell if there's an area where there's abnormal circuits, switching mode power supplies, dirty electricity, that can entrain the tissues to cause inflammation. Now, we discovered something interesting. You can actually get foil material you can wrap around the bottom of a light, not the portion that screws in, but these new light-emitting diode lights, because they generate very serious electropollution, but you can actually wrap those and tape it around the base so you can actually prevent pollution. You can also put it on the A and B channels of your power coming into your home, power panel. These Stetzerizer transformers actually will grab the low frequency, very harmful frequencies that can harm you, but the Stetzer capacitors, and you can actually put them in various parts of your home. I have them all over the place. I have them in my studio, in the kitchen, in the bedrooms, and you go along with a Stetzer meter and you plug it in and go, oh my gosh, look at how much of these transient surges are occurring that are literally entraining the body. You can also have things that literally will detect not only the gigahertz solution, you can point it toward a home or a place where you are, or a business, and you can determine if there's a lot of Wi-Fi radiation, smart meter radiation, etc., and you can reduce it, because these are all very harmful to your body. Your body is run on biophotons, and I actually contacted him last year, but he's going to be available shortly, Bruce Lipton, talking about the biology of belief. Now, a lot of people think it's kind of Eastern mysticism. It's not. He shrouds it in a kind of like philosophy, but the conformational change of specific regulatory proteins caused by biophotons turns your DNA on and off through histone proteins and basically unveiling or covering genes. That's pretty cool. It means frequency plus substance equals life. So life is not a static thing like a statue, otherwise you'd just be a statue. And it also doesn't mean that genes are deterministic. So when you take electropollution and you reduce it dramatically, number one, you're going to sleep better. Number two, you're going to also heal better. Number three, you're going to release melatonin, because you only heal when you release melatonin, and the parts of the brain actually regulate not only the healing of structures of tissues, but they actually send a frequency down to turn the genes on to make your liver still be a liver. So when you start trying to heal your body, you have to have normalized and reduce the underlying pollution that's affecting the body. You can also test radiation, where we have a lot of information about Fukushima Daiichi, and I have an article I'll be posting up here in the next few days. It'll be here not only on Genesis Network, but on the Nutrimedical Report and Clay and Iron. And I'm working on a 5-year project with a book, which includes a lot of references, where we had posted information up on ENE News from our show and dialogue, where we have raised scientific and technical questions, not just how to protect yourself with nutraceuticals, but also on the ground, what needs to be done. Now, you ideally should have one of our radiation detectors, and we have several different levels. We have ones that are a few $100s that are pretty good, and it's a good idea to have one, because if there ever is a nuclear attack of any kind besides EMP, you want to be able to know where you go at right angles to the plume of radiation so you don't get blasted. Most people don't realize the nuclear war is completely survivable if you're not in the blast zone of the main bombs that come down. If there was a war with somebody like Russia or China, they don't intend on blowing up Las Vegas. They want to buy it. The same with the Russians. They want to knock out military bases. They'd probably hit us with an EMP weapon first, and to see if society, by the way, would cause more damage to itself if it lost its power grid, which we should have a buried, we call plasma distribution power grid, and we should have it so that it's redundant, so that even if it goes down, we have backup power stored, like the light sail system that my niece developed, that's working with major billionaires like Bill Gates, etc., that can store 750 kilowatts. Systems like the solar to hydrogen or wind to hydrogen, I call it windrogen systems, like Professor McCanny, they can be scaled up to 1,000 feet for his wing generator system. And in other words, there's solutions, but it takes time to implement these solutions. And what we have to start understanding is that our current way we are governed or misinformed and so on is the reason why they get off into foolish stuff with our politicians. The same way we're not dealing with Fukushima Daiichi, we have to realize bioaccumulation over the next 5 or 10 years is going to really hurt people unless they're detoxing. So I tell them you need to identify if you're exposed to radiation. You have ocean plumes that are going to have a specific pattern, which are going to affect, high velocity fish like tuna that cross the oceans. Within a few months, they identified 97% in San Diego were poisoned. It also means the filter feeder fish along the coast, all the way from Canada to the United States to the Baja, Mexico, are also poisoned with radiotoxins. But the air plumes are primarily at pretty high altitude. From my research, they're probably at 26 to 30,000 feet by the time they hit North America. And unless it rains or the plume descends for some reason, like a heat inversion, most of the time the airborne radiation is at pretty high altitude. It's going to primarily be in the northern states, border between the United States and Canada. And it's going to tend to dive down over the Rocky Mountains, go toward the Midwest, toward places like Missouri, and then shoot back up again toward Missouri, where they've identified it even in their milk products. Yeah, okay. If we have Bob, let's talk to Bob Vineyard. So Emil didn't make it today, but if you want to get information on how to protect yourself, to test radiation, how to test ultraviolet light, how to protect yourself, even clothing, to mitigate these things, go through our main page, Nutrimedical.com, hit the button for, under affiliates for less EMF. You can talk to Emil de Toffel, who's both a electrical engineer and has a background as a dentist. And they have more testing equipment for almost anything that can affect you under the sun. Welcome back to the program, Bob. I think I heard that Bob was available, but I don't hear Bob. So, okay, Bob, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me, Dr. Bill?
I can indeed. I can hear you now. One of the things that people constantly, how can I say this without, I want to be offensive, but I want to do it in a nice way. There's a lot of people that are not experts in functional medicine, toxicology, which, by the way, functional medicine includes everything. I'm a surgeon, I'm an intensivist, I'm a family doctor, internal medicine. I've done every kind of specialty work. I've done every kind of surgery except for open heart and brain surgery, but I've done vascular surgery, orthopedics, plastics, you name it.
Are you still there? Okay. Okay, great. Hey, the important thing about pure water systems for folks to understand is our goal is to create a system that provides you and your family the absolute purest drinking water possible. And the way that we do that is we combine the most effective known technologies for purifying water. So when we talk about what are those technologies, well, everybody in the water industry uses granular activated carbon in some fashion, GAC, to purify the water and remove chlorine, makes the water taste better, remove organic molecules, and things like disinfection byproducts. So when chlorine reacts with organic matter in the water, it creates trihalomethanes, haloacetic acids. These are known carcinogenic substances, and they're part of the things that are regulated by the EPA for your water system, your local municipality. When they treat with chlorine, they've got to remove, they've got to deal with not too much chlorine, make sure the water's clean enough before it starts so you don't generate a lot of trihalomethanes, haloacetic acid. So a good carbon filter done right will deal with those things.
Yes, we're back on air. So, Bob, I guess my little thing timed out, although I do have Skype here if I need to switch over and have a nice new XLR mic. So if my access goes, I can go to my new XLR mic so it sounds pretty good, too. And it won't sound like I'm in a barrel. Tell us why. Why do you think you still have a public that thinks that they can get ceramic filter or distilled filter of this. You know, it's okay to have something like one of these life straws that you have in your backpack if you're up in the mountain, so you don't want to get beaver fever, which is, these parasites in your gut. And you don't want to get dirty water because, by the way, the biggest cause of death worldwide is, number 2 is malaria, but number 1 is just dirty water and diarrhea that kills you as a child. That's the biggest cause of death in the world. And these things are okay to have a life straw, but for God's sake, if you're trying to take the toxins out, like Orange County toilet to tap water that has doping agents for making microchips, people's chemo, birth control pill, multiple medications, including, they actually did a sample of various waters across the country, including the concentration of parts per million of Prozac, which is an antidepressant. And people say, no, Dr. Deagle, you're exaggerating. I say, you know what? I don't exaggerate. If anything, I actually kind of dumb it down so you won't just, go freak out completely. But it's that bad. You can detect doping agents, birth control pill, cardiac thing, chemotherapy, chemo, and Prozac. So while you're taking all this crap, you can actually realize they are medicating away your depression, turning you into a zombie. Interesting, eh?
It really is. What I think that there's a couple of things. Number one, ignorance, and I say ignorance, I don't mean that in a negative sense. I say, some people, there's one thing to be ignorant, it's another thing to be stupid. And ignorant just means you haven't heard the information, you're unaware, you haven't been educated about something yet. But what's worse is the stupid people who know that the problem exists and choose to be willfully ignorant about it. That's just dumb. And so, the truth is, our environment these days is phenomenally toxic. And this is the thing that gets me, is we got all these people that worry about greenhouse gases and global warming and all this stuff. We're going to kill ourselves as a species long before any global warming is ever going to cause any major problems. We're going to kill ourselves off from our toxic environment, from all this crap that is allowed into the environment, and a lot of it is, like you said, it's chemotherapy drugs, it's antidepressants, it's all these drugs. You see them on TV if you watch TV for half an hour.
Now we're talking about medical doctors, okay? I was certified as also a toxicologist with a BIMI, and did occupational medicine toxicology with both nuclear plants, pulp and paper mills. Really toxic environments where they're using all kinds of fancy, very fast-drying glues and other things. And even among occupational doctors, do you think any of these doctors understood the intermediate metabolism, the toxicology, the cellular effects and epigenetic effects on a person's ability to reproduce or to have normal biology? What percentage do you think knows what I know about this? What percentage?
Well, I'd say there's probably 1 or 2% because they're the ones who are members of the Academy of
They belong to the Academy of Environmental Medicine. They belong to the Academy of Advancement in Medicine or Anti-Aging. They have a background in toxicology, and they usually have an advanced degree like I have in chemistry, biochemistry, before they went into medicine. Most of the doctors out there, even specialists, are knuckleheads. They'll pretend that they know stuff. They don't know crap. And the problem is, even people that are sent to the department basically don't know anything. That's why if I get requested, for example, remember Karen Silkwood with the nuclear industry in California and what they're doing up there, and how she got involved? I've had silkwood moments. I had an industry that had, this is a good example, that had chromium hexavalent chromium plating plant for plating the drive shafts of tanks and boats and other things. And I did a plant walkthrough, which I do, and I actually would do a plant walkthrough in terms of the occupational dangers to people, the toxic dangers, and the dangers for things like things that are low, they're going to bang people in the head, or where a forklift comes around a corner, or manufacturing production lines that are going to get people's arms pulled off or do other things. Well, I had the head of that just finished his special training in the plant in Lodo, southern Denver, back in the 90s, and he was freaked out because he realized they had open vats of hexavalent chromium and a giant Erlenmeyer flask with about 1.5 tons of mercury. But they had open vats, and one of the patients I personally saw had sores all over his body. I said, how the heck did you get these? He says, I can't go within 2 to 3 blocks of this plant now. I'm so sensitized to hexavalent chromium. I break out weeping, sores, and bleed and start to have cardiac arrhythmias if I go near the plant. I said, ooh, that's not good. So I went and did a walkthrough afterward, and I said, oh my gosh, this place is dangerous. Hexavalent chromium, by the way, is an explosive risk because it'll blow up. If the vapor gets lit by a spark, it's boom. But it's also one of the most toxic substances known to man. And they had actually vapors coming right off their production plant. So I contacted, at first, the District 5 Environmental Protection Agency. And they go, yawn, we're not going to do anything. So I contacted the fire marshal and said, now, I talked to the head fire marshal for South Denver, and I said, this is the situation. I said, I'm an expert on chemistry and explosives. I started making solid fuel rockets and solid explosives when I was 10 and 12. So I know how to make real nasty explosives, in fact, much more explosives than C4. Okay? So when I told him, and then he went down and did a plant walkthrough, he completely freaked out. He had fire engines down there. He went, he must have had 20 trucks and cars and everything. They shut the whole place down. And then they contacted the EPA. My boss was, oh, what the hell did you do? They go, I said, this place, and the reason why I said how toxic it was is we had a lady they called the squirrel lady. And the guy that connected me was their safety officer that went through the special course in toxicology from the plant. And he said, well, this lady who's getting our wind downwind is nursing back to health the squirrels that don't die that are falling out of the trees in front of her house, because there's a lot of trees in that area in southern Denver. So the squirrels are falling out of the tree, and they had birth defects. I said, this is funny, because squirrels are like, they're small mammals, but their life cycle is really short, so you can see a number of cycles and see all the horrifying effects over a few generations in no time at all. So I talked to the squirrel lady, and she told me, I said, oh my gosh. And then she wasn't stupid. This lady was smart. She was identifying specific anatomic birth defects. And I knew that we were really up against it. So now this, by the way, these vapors and so on are getting into groundwater. They're getting recycled through the hydrological cycle that get into the water supply. We had a similar situation in Grand Lake Reservoir, which, by the way, feeds down to the Stanley Lake north of Denver, up near Broomfield. Now, most people don't realize that the Schwarzman mine is the highest concentration uranium mine in the Western world. The highest, basically, in this part of the planet, in terms of concentration of uranium. And the uranium trailings were actually leaking when there were rains in the mountains down directly into the Grand Lake Reservoir system. So one guy filtered the water in Stanley Lake in the bottom of his home because he was kind of a home expert. He put a couple 100 pounds of charcoal, and he got SWAT teamed because they saw when they fly over over every city, because I had classified clearance, they fly over every city to see if there's isotopes being stored by somebody for a dirty bomb. And they SWAT teamed him because his basement water filtration system off the Grand Lake Reservoir was so radioactive they could pick up from a plane. I want to talk about a number of interesting questions people often raise, and this one seems to come up more often than I would have expected. We're going to have Ron in a second, is reversal of calcification of the pineal gland. And we use Indiamese, we use Nutriodine, we use Nutridefense, and xenoestrin detox, and these will actually decalcify your pineal gland. We also have some molecules that regenerate the gland that are available through our affiliate anti-aging society. That's a DNA modulating peptide, a combination of different peptides, that if you do a consultation, I can obtain that for you as well. This is a nutrapharmaceutical. It's not available to the general public. If you contact me, I can get it as well. We do have Ron from Lumen Photon. Actually, I had an interesting case of a lady who not only has significant visual problems, but middle ear problems as well with tinnitus. And Lumen Photon can be very helpful for tinnitus. We use our protocol, our ear care, which is Meni-Arin, Cell Detox, Glutathione, Regenerex, and Nutrichala, to remyelinate the nerve fiber tracts, Neurogen, and Sphingolin, which is myelin basic protein, which is often dysmyelination. And we also use things like Cognition Plus, Brain Power, and Synaptin, but we can use Lumen Photon. And ectoderm, which is skin, and neuroectoderm, which is a similar tissues, believe it or not. The skin and the brain are from the same type of ontogeny tissue. Requires frequency number 3 to stimulate healing. Frequency 6 and 7 will reduce inflammation. So we can use it actually in the middle ear, frequency number 3, to regenerate the middle ear nerves, and we can also reduce the inflammation with frequency settings 6 and 7. So for tinnitus, especially if there's what's called endolymph hypertension in the middle ear balance mechanisms, which can cause vertigo too, or inflammation that's causing the hair cells to drop out so you're losing hearing, we can use the lumen photon to stimulate healing. Have you had people that have done this in the past for balance problems or hearing, Ron?
Yes.
Tell them what kind of outcomes do they have and what settings do they like the best.
Usually number 4.
And number 4 because it is
4 and 3. 4 is mostly 4.
And mostly 4 because 4 is supposed to be for hormonal issues. Why 4 rather than, say, 3 for ectoderm or neuroectoderm?
I was thinking it was some of this would be endodermal tissues. No.
Endodermal tissues, of course, are primarily you're talking about glandular tissues, and then organ tissues like the heart, liver, kidneys are frequency 5, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would figure frequency 3 and maybe 6 or 7. 6 and 7 are good anti-inflammatory. Oftentimes 15 to 20 minutes of 6 or 7, and then maybe 30 minutes of frequency 3 twice a day will do significant to help improve the healing of the middle ear. We also have, of course, these new peptides along with our nutraceuticals that will stop the free radicals, allow remyelination, and get rid of any we call inflammatory changes causing a dropout or death of we call middle ear hair cells in hearing, or the balance mechanism cells that pick up the movement of the endolymph and the semicircular canals that allow you to tell which direction you are, if you're up or sideways or whatever. So it really works. We can also use it over the eyes, decreasing intraocular pressure, frequency number 6 and 7, and to stimulate healing of the back of the retina with the the rods and cones and the optic nerve head is frequency number 3, right?
Yes.
Now, if you have somebody who has concussion, I actually got an interesting paper I pulled up. There's a fibrillary protein that comes from the glial cells, and that fibrillary protein actually is a trigger that you can actually even do a blood test to determine if someone's had a concussion. So somewhere along the line, they'll probably develop a way of doing a rapid kind of test where you take a drop of blood. If the fibrillary protein shows up on this little drop of blood on the test strip, you've had enough bang on your head, you're actually dumping protein from your damaged microglia, which is the support cells for your brain, that the fibrillary proteins crossing the blood-brain barrier and showing up in your peripheral fingertip. Now, what people don't understand is when you lumen photons, one of the integral steps to stop post-concussive, we call BOF, or brain on fire. So if you get banged on the head because you're doing mixed martial arts, and there's again a number of both wrestlers, mixed martial artists, boxers, etc., that start to get a little crazy because we're getting what I call lemon meringue syndrome, where if you've ever seen the meringue on top of the lemon pie, the meringue starts to slide on it, and you actually cut across the dendrites between the neurons, and the axons get sheared right off. So you start getting little holes in your brain. Now, those holes happen because there's inflammation, and eventually you get what we call neuron cell dropout, which leaves a big hole when the large astrocyte dies in the midst of a bunch of little forest of little microglia cells, supporting cells that nourish it, provide nutrients and oxygen and other factors and proteins. So lumen photon can be used for that too. So you can take someone and give them our cocktail for reversing migraines, headaches, and concussions, and you can actually use that along with a lumen photon pad, and even add the micropulse for Schumann resonance too, with an Under Armour headband. In fact, what I do in the morning for my eyes is I put my lumen pad on my 90. I have 216. I have a 264 dual pad system at my desk here, and I put it on my eyes for at least a half an hour in the morning for helping my eyes, stay healthy. It also works because in the frontal areas of the brain, the ectoderm, which is basically your sinus cavities too, it helps your sinus. In the past, I used to have sinus. I use a Sinupulse Elite with Nutridyne, but I also use a lumen pad to heal my sinuses and also to clear any toxins from the brain, because when you're putting it on the front of your head, it'll go through 12 inches of brain, bone, ligament, muscle, whatever. So if you're trying to detox your brain, which by the way, most people think, well, do I need to detox your brain? Yes, you do. And does the brain have a good capacity to detox? Absolutely not. If you don't mobilize those toxins, which are detoxed by your liver with the general circulation, there's no detox happening. You have to mobilize the toxins and then filter them through your liver, and then get the liver to convert them by changing non-polar molecules to polar, which allows them to go in your bile and get out of your body or go through your kidneys. So lumen photon is great for putting over the liver if you want to detox. What setting do you like for that? Because I think I would guess, being endoderm, that would be setting number 5.
4. Endoderm
4 and 5.
is 4.
For endoderm 4. Yeah, so we're talking about glandular tissues like liver. You're saying endoderm meaning 4 and 5?
All of that.
Yeah, 4 and 5. But for glandular tissue like thyroid gland, you're talking about frequency number 5, right?
Right.
Right. So endoderm would be for the heart, liver, kidneys, etc. And that means when you put it over your liver, if you're trying to detox, you're going to amplify the detox capacity. So you take our detox things like life support, samethyl, bio-LVR, xenoestrogen detox, NutriDefense, and then the body says, hey, I got all these extra molecules here. I've revved up the metabolism. It stimulates nitric oxide too. So you can put your lumen pads over your kidneys if you're trying to lower blood pressure, and you're going to see your C-reactive protein in your PI1, which is plasminogen activator inhibitor number 1 levels, drop. In fact, the studies done on it have shown that it drops over 90% just by putting the lumen pad. What setting would you use over the lumen pad over the adrenal glands and the kidneys to lower CRP, C-reactive protein? Because most people don't realize this.
Major study with 3,500 students over that 3-year period. They used the NICO setting and said they had every combination they could come up with, and they said the NICO setting got the best results.
Right. So you put NICO over your kidneys, and how many minutes? Half an hour a day to lower blood pressure, to improve C-reactive protein, to reduce vascular inflammation, to improve total body nitric oxide synthase, and also probably to induce superoxide dismutase, because those are the primary enzymatic imbalances that actually stimulate not only insulin resistance and diabetes, but vascular disease. Stay right there, Ron. You're going to get an extra segment today because of our wonky schedule, so stay right there. We'll be back in a moment. And your questions on any topic, especially now dealing with lumen photon, give us a call, 800-259-5791. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back, and we are talking with Ron at Lumen Photon. And, of course, we have a few new sizes we're posting up this week, so you'll see some different sizes available, some of the larger and smaller. Lumen Photon is kind of an amazing little device. There are other devices that are tried to use for stimulating healing. One of them is called microcurrent. Microcurrent's very surface, though. It doesn't really penetrate deeply into tissues. And you need a doctor's script, and if you don't have the right frequencies, you can actually increase inflammation. The nice thing about what I call the push-and-play system with Lumen Photon is you can just put it over the area. You don't need to find a specific spot like acupuncture. You put it over there, it's going to find the spots that need to be stimulated. It's going to put the energy right through a whole foot of tissue, spinal cord, brain, muscle, ligament, liver, whatever, and it penetrates right through your entire body. I mean, it'll go through a foot of tissue. What's neat, from what I can see, is this is so simple. And the thing is that because it also works on veterinary issues, whether it's a budgie bird or a big horse or your doggy and cat, what's amazing to me is how effective it is at stimulating healing. Pain control, for example, most of the post-operative pain surgery units from orthopedic surgery, let's say knee surgeries, abdominal surgery, plastic surgery, if they all had in the post-op recovery room lumen pads, they'd give virtually very little or no narcotics or anything else for pain at all. And what would happen is that post-operative, we wouldn't have post-trauma people getting stuck on narcotics and later sliding over to heroin, which is often the case because heroin's cheaper than a lot of the narcotic pills. So, especially if the doctor starts to try to cut them off and the patient says, hey, I'm addicted now to these pills, so they just slide over and become a heroin addict. That doesn't happen. Lumen Photon will turn off their pain. We have people that say their pain is at an 8 or 9 out of 10, and in a half an hour with the lumen pads, their pain's down to a 2. That's pretty typical, isn't it, Ron?
Yeah, in most cases, that's pretty staggering because people are just basically crying for help.
Well, I'm going to explain something. I'm putting together an article and an ebook on pain, and unfortunately, there's a difference. And a good example is someone like Donald Trump. He's very bombastic. he grates people because the way he talks like a guy his age, which is in his late 60s. I'm, 5 years younger than Donald Trump, but we're in the same roughly age range. And he's very competent, but people may find this surprising. I don't think he's arrogant. I just think he's so competent, people consider it arrogance. Well, the same thing goes with pain. I did a lot of research on pain, starting with rheumatology back 40 years ago, working for the head of the American and Canadian Arthritis Association. I did pain research on the Langerhans complex. It's actually in my 2 patents in the 1980s on pain, and worked out the theory that explains that there's basically pain generators, like it might be in the periosteum of your bone or the Glisson's capsule of your liver, if you've got metastases or you've got some expanding liver disease. But then you can't feel pain because the pain projectors project that pain to what's called the Langerhans gate in your skin. Now, the Langerhans complex is a combination of autonomic and sympathetic nerve fibers, A delta and C fibers, and there's actually inputs that go back to what's called the dorsal root ganglion, which is called the second gate. The third gate is what's called the ascending spinal thalamic tracts. The fourth is what's called the subthalamic nuclei, and then there's projections. So altogether, there's 7 gates that regulate your pain. Now, if you're using a pain medication, you're trying to work on the central nervous system, which is beyond the gates. It's called the processing. So once you get beyond the thalamus, 3 of those 7 gates are what's called processing gates from the subthalamic nuclei. You cannot suffer pain unless you have skin. This is a really interesting finding, and I think I'm the only one that actually said that. You have to have skin to suffer pain, even if you have cancer pain in your bones. You cannot suffer pain without skin. When you use a lumen pad over your skin, you're actually putting frequency in to increase the electron density, nitric oxide, turn off inflammatory cytokines, stop things like slow reactive substance anaphylaxis. TNF-alpha, you can actually do a spinal tap in a transforaminal tap and actually draw out the fluid and know that if somebody's got spinal nerve root inflammation at a specific level, their TNF-alpha level in their spinal fluid at that immediate level is going to be high. Isn't it interesting? So there's a chemical reaction in the what's called the neurolemma, the nerve itself, or the dural nerve sleeve that's causing it, because there's only 4 structures in your spine that are innervated for pain. The dorsal root, basically the dural nerve sleeve, the posterior annulus, the ligamentum flavum, and the apophyseal joints. And 75% of the nerve innervation for pain is the apophyseal joints on the other side of your spine. The other 25% is split up between those other factors. Everything else is anesthetic. There's no pain-inducing factors from anything else in your spine, the bones, or whatever else, okay? But without projection to the skin, the primary pain gate, there's nothing. That's why when you put a lumen pad on them, why is it so effective? Because it's shutting down what's called a primary pain gate. You don't give what's called a pain processing molecule like a narcotic, thinking it's going to shut down the pain gate, and it doesn't do anything. In fact, when the narcotic stops, the pain gate, even your natural dynorphin and beta-endorphin levels drop. So what you have to understand is what we're doing is we give you natural anti-inflammatories like cell defense, Inflamax, tendon mender to turn your tenocytes back to normal, joint performance, collagen max, and mountain red velvet to rebuild your tissues and turn off the cytokines. But when you actually shut off the pain gate with lumen photon, you're actually turning off the pain signals coming from the pain generators, and you don't get the reflex muscle spasm. Like I worked out with Dr. Jim Henchcock, who already had in '97 what's called the Axon 2 nerve scanner that would measure A delta and C fiber, but you had to have a patient report to tell you if they could feel the sensation of the little gold-tipped electrolyte-soaked electrode to determine if they reached what's called threshold. I discovered, because I did 7 years of research with Dr. Stu Donaldson at the University of Calgary between 1980 to 87, that you could set up electrodes at the base of the skull, and you had recruitment up to fascia all the way through the entire body. So at the base of the skull, if those showed a spike in muscle firing patterns of the paraspinal nuclei of the muscles, paraspinal muscles, you could detect it on the machine even though there's no movement, and it would tell you hit what's called a pain threshold. So in other words, pain is a neurological processing imbalance. It is not what people think. Pain is something that if you change the processing signal, the pain turns off. That's why lumen photon works. People say, well, it's not a chemical. It's not a this and that. Yeah, but it actually shuts off the pain gate. And when it shuts it off, you don't get reflex muscle spasm. It'll pop your bones out and your rib heads out of place and cause you to walk funny and cause literally the local inflammation to start. Like, for example, tendinitis, synovitis, arthritis, all the other changes that occur are regulated by the nervous system. Interesting, hey? A lot of people think, well, no, it's my immune system. And I said, well, okay, if that's the case, and I raise this question because I like to ask questions. People say, well, why are you smart, Deagle? I said, because I'm really good at asking questions, even before I know a damn thing. And I asked my professor, Dr. John Woodbury, back in the mid-'70s, I said, well, if someone's got rheumatoid arthritis, how come if they've had it for 10 years, their left knee is perfectly fine, there's no synovial changes and no rheumatoid nodules, and their right knee's all screwed up? And he looked at me like, well, I don't know. I said, it's got to be the nervous system. So there's a nervous system override that regulates it. So I actually would take an electronic point finder, and you could find the knee that was actively getting inflamed. We'll go beep, 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 beep all around the knee. When you went to the other one, it was relatively silent. So in other words, without the nervous input through your pain gate and your modulation of the nervous system regulating inflammation, even if you have antibodies to a joint like in rheumatoid, where you got a positive rheumatoid factor test and anti-nuclear antibodies and all the other junk, you can't have inflammation without the nervous system. So when you shut off the pain gate, you don't just turn off the pain, you turn off the inflammation. You allow the tissues to start healing. You improve nitric oxide and microcirculation. Same way you can heal someone's brain or eyes, and you can stop their arthritis. You don't just turn off the pain. You actually switch the switch so it goes from sympathetic fight or flight to healing, parasympathetic dominance, healing and regeneration. That's pretty cool, isn't it? Now, you're not going to hear this anywhere else because these other doctors don't know. And I searched for years to see if anybody had actually published anything with even some of the things I have. And I'm going to publish it all so other doctors can see I know what I'm talking about and they can go and validate it. You can get an Axon 2 scanner right now from Jim Hedgecock's company. We taught in 2003 hundreds of doctors in San Francisco in our conference. Physiatrists, neurosurgeons, rehab doctors, occupational med doctors, etc., to know how to use an Axon 2 scanner with our potentiometry that measures surface EMG. When you use a lumen photon, you don't just turn off the pain, you turn on the healing. That's cool. It's one of the best stimulants for stem cell regeneration of organs. You want to regenerate your kidneys besides your nutraceuticals and our biomodulating peptides we can get you for regenerating your kidneys? Slap a lumen pad over your back. It doesn't just lower your hemoglobin, it's your Pi1 and your C-reactive protein. It actually stimulates regeneration of the organ it's over. That's cool. It stimulates stem cells to regenerate the organ and turn off the pain and reduce the cytokine level in the tissue. That's amazing.